Hi guys, welcome. Today I'm going to review Toxic Sludge is Good for You. This book is from 1995 and it's all about the public relations industry. And so it kind of pulls back the curtain on what you're seeing when you're looking at the news, what you're hearing on the radio, advertisements. This was from 30 years ago as well, 1995, right? 30 years ago. So just imagine how insidious it is now if they could pull off some of this stuff. And the public relations industry was so good back then. This book is good because it gives you examples from the 80s and 90s about how public perception of specific brands has been changed based on public relations efforts and where the money is and how things that seem to be grassroots are not actually grassroots. They're astroturfed, which means the companies pay to make them seem like grassroots community-supported efforts when they're really not. A lot of the news organizations will be fed videos from public relations companies that are already made news stories that have a it looks like a news story, but it's actually an advertisement for the company. It makes the company look good. It's also to get the name out in front of people on a regular basis where they don't think they're being manipulated. They think they're watching news, but the reality is it's paid for by the company to the public relations industry, which almost all the public relations companies are owned by advertising agencies on Madison Avenue. This was back in the 80s and 90s. Again, it must be much more sophisticated now. But this book was phenomenal because it had so many examples and stories about just wild stories about what public relations executives, professionals are willing to do to bend the truth, to mold the truth on behalf of their corporate clients. And some of their corporate clients can be governments as well. So I'm going to talk maybe about a couple of these stories that were in here that just blew my mind, but also if you're interested in movies along with this, I always like to watch movies too to get, lies in the news, truth in movies, right? Isn't that a saying? So there were 4 movies that I watched in preparation for this podcast. Let's see, what were they? One was The Invisible Man from 1933. It's an H.G. Wells. It's based on the H.G. Wells book. And this author compares The Invisible Man to the public relations industry. The Invisible Man, basically, it was like a horror movie from the 1930s. And The Invisible Man was this genetically modified guy, if you will, who turned invisible and was causing havoc all over town. So the public relations industry could be compared to that. So that was a fun movie to watch. The second is Wag the Dog from 1997. This is a conspiracy classic if you haven't seen it. This is basically how public relations, Robert De Niro, he's kind of like a spin doctor type public relations guy, strategist, and he got in bed with, if you call it, like a Hollywood producer, and they created a fake war to distract from a presidential scandal. So on behalf of the president, to try to cover up this scandal, I think it was a sex scandal, what's new, they created a fake war. They hired actresses, they created the background, they made up a country, So it's kind of a must-see because it really does ring true to a lot of the things that are going on now with how publicized specific wars are. And it makes you question, especially after seeing it in such a comical release as this movie called Wag the Dog from 1997 with Robert De Niro and I think it's Hoffman, right? Can't remember his first name. But it's a must. It's a must see just to see kind of behind the scenes what's really going on. I mean, are we really seeing footage from a specific war? Why are we seeing that footage if it even is authentic footage? Most likely it's not. So that's Wag the Dog. Another movie that was really good was called Thank You for Smoking. And it's based on a book by Christopher Buckley, I think the guy's name is. And it's about a kind of charming, ethically challenged individual named Nick Naylor. And So he goes around, he has his son, and he's trying to teach his son morals, but of course he's representing big tobacco. So that was a great movie from 2005. And my final recommendation for PR movies would be Our Brand is Crisis. That's the name of the movie. It's a Sandra Bullock movie from 2015. She's called Calamity Jane. She's the PR strategist essentially, and she's been hired to represent a really unpopular presidential candidate in, I think it's Bolivia. Yes, Bolivia. And she's opposite Billy Bob Thornton. And she pulls all sorts of, and Billy Bob Thornton is the other presidential candidate's public relations guy. So they kind of battle it out in this movie, doing one horrible thing to the other person's candidate, like the public perception. And so that was a fantastic movie. I had never even heard of it. I just found it while doing research for this book, and I really enjoyed it. So that's called Our Brand is Crisis, 2015 with Sandra Bullock. So that said, there you have your 4 movies. Some really interesting case studies in this book. So they went through lots of different times where the public relations industry has spun news in the way that their clients want it to be spun. And the most egregious, I think, was from the Gulf War. So in 1990, the Bush administration was wanting to go to war in Iraq. And so a public relations company, I believe it was Hill and Knowlton, coached a young girl named Naira, who was 15 years old. She was the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, ambassador to the United States, his daughter. They staged this entire thing to look like she was testifying in front of Congress, but it wasn't really Congress. It was like a staged, bogus human relations committee. So she couldn't go to jail for committing perjury because it wasn't a real testimony. But she testified that she saw with her own eyes that Iraqi soldiers had come into a hospital in Kuwait and dumped over babies in incubators onto the cold floor and left them to die. And that story went everywhere. And George Bush repeated it again, senior. And that was a pretty big catalyst for public opinion shifting to go to Iraq. So that was egregious. And they touch on that in this book. And I wanted to show it to you. I found the testimony, and I'm going to try to screen share and just show you a piece of it. So here we go.
Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Naira, and I just came out of Kuwait. My mother and I were in Kuwait on August 2nd for a peaceful summer holiday. My older sister had a baby on July 29th, and we wanted to spend some time in Kuwait with her. I only pray that none of my 10th grade classmates had a summer vacation like I did. I may have wished sometime that I could be an adult, that I could grow up quickly. What I saw happen to the children of Kuwait and to my country has changed my life forever. It has changed the life of all Kuwaitis, young and old. We are children no more. My sister, with my 5-day-old nephew, traveled across the desert to safety. There was no milk available for the baby in Kuwait. They barely escaped when their car was stuck in the desert sand, and help came from Saudi Arabia. I stayed behind and wanted to do something for my country. The second week after an invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died that day as well.
So that was all fake, put on by Hill & Knowlton Public Relations Company. And she was coached when to cry. All of that was fake. So wild, right? On C-SPAN. So that was one of the stories in the book. And I feel like until you've seen this, you won't be able to spot it in live time, and you won't be skeptical of the news now. But once you've seen stuff like this and see what happened in the past, you'll know to be smarter in the future when you watch things like the news, which aren't even, that's not the news. That's PR to go to war. So that's my rant. Anyway, let me see if I had any other. Oh, yeah. Bernays in general. I thought it was really interesting. He was known as a braggart, and they talk a little bit about Bernays in here in chapter 2. So Bernays, and of course he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he really was up on his high horse about his achievements in the public relations industry, like the Torches of Freedom in New York City, that he put on for the tobacco industry to get women to release the taboo of smoking. And so after that, women would smoke and it was cool. So Bernays, he was Jewish, and yet he bragged about Goebbels in Germany, who used his book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, to consolidate Nazi power as a basis for the destruction campaign against the Jews in 1933. So that's Edward Bernays, good guy, just he's responsible for the, engineering of consent. Here's another one of his books. It's a classic, just called Propaganda. So if you haven't read it, this is kind of a must. So the book talks a lot about Edward Bernays. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. That was worth mentioning. Oh, the whole title, Toxic Sludge is Good for You, was interesting because while the guys were writing this book, the PR company for the toxic sludge industry came after them and said, we're worried that, about your title of the book might be deceiving, because actually it's not called toxic sludge anymore. It's called biosolids. So they're trying to sell this toxic sludge, which toxic sludge is a combination of human poo-poo and industrial chemicals, like corporate chemicals from like non-biodegradable cancerous causing pharmaceuticals, hormones, anything like horrible things you can think of coming off from industrial waste, and packaged together with human poo-poo, and they don't know what to do with it because it's so toxic and contaminated. So they've decided to sell it as fertilizer and fertilize our farmlands with it and call it biosolids. So this is a whole thing. This was 30 years ago. So they called these guys up, and then there was, they had a contest to come up with the name biosolids. So let's see, they had, I think I wrote down some of the names here they had. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Members sent in 250 suggestions, including BioLife, BioSlurp, Black Gold, Geoslime, Skidoo, Humanure, Hoodoo, Organic Residuals, Bioresidue, Power Grow, Organite, NutriCake. So they settled on biosolids, but toxic sludge. So the PR industry called them and sent like people to spy on them to make sure that this book wouldn't be publicly like advertised, because they didn't want to destroy their campaign of trying to sell biosolids, toxic sludge, as fertilizer to farmers. So by the way, we are still eating the food, if it's not organic, that's been contaminated with toxic sludge. So that was really interesting. I also have I have a advertisement on toxic sludge for you guys to watch. Let's see here. Okay, here we go.
For generations, farmers have relied on high-quality biosolids to replenish nutrients lost during crop production and harvesting. As an economical and sustainable fertilizer, biosolids enhance the soil and work to decrease our impact on the environment.
Well, it is a material that has beneficial applications, and land application is one of them. Returning that nitrogen to the soil is part of the nitrogen cycle.
We use the recycled biosolids because they add a lot of nutrients to the soil, adding a lot of nitrogen and potassium, and really helping out with the organic matter to help retain moisture. And also, it's much more.
So wild, right? That's an advertisement clearly from some PR grassroots channel on YouTube that's promoting Sludge. And you see the farmer that looks like he's like this organic farmer. No, that's like horrible, toxic, cancerous stuff that they're putting into the farmland. So anyway, that was an interesting addition. This all of chapter 8 was all about Sludge. So they dedicated a whole chapter to that. Trying to see if there's anything else. The other story I really thought was sad was there was a girl in New York. She was a 33-year-old lonely woman, math teacher in New York. She was starting to go to animal rights rallies and things like that. And then some lady named Sapone, who worked for Perceptions International, which is a PR firm, they were employed by U.S. Surgical. U.S. Surgical was a company that came up with surgical staples. And so in order to get these surgical staples on the market, they had to test them. And how they did it was they would test them on dogs. And so they would staple the dog's intestines and then the dogs would die. And they did it for thousands and thousands of dogs. So when the animal rights people came and realized this, and rightly so, they were enraged and they started protesting. So the public relations industry sent their little spies in and started becoming friends with this kind of mentally unstable 33-year-old girl and coerced her into a planned assassination attempt against the U.S. Surgical CEO. What was his name? Leon Hirsch. And so they gave her money. They gave her a car. They encouraged her to get BOMBs. And they encouraged her to drive across state lines into Connecticut, where their headquarters is. And of course, police apprehended her at the border, but they knew it was coming. And it was great press for U.S. Surgical. Like, can you believe these crazy human rights people are murderers? They're out to kill us now. They're nut jobs. So that, I think, was a perfect example of the PR industry at work. And how they take vulnerable people, they get in on authentic grassroots movements that have authentic reasons to be upset for corporate injustices, and then they spin it around and make it seem like the grassroots citizens are crazies. So that happens all the time, still today with movements. So if you have an authentic reason to be upset about some corporate missteps, criminal operations, they will make it seem like you're crazy, you're anti-American, you're a tiny mustache man supporter, right? So anyway, there's all these names that they give you. So they did all that for this poor 33-year-old girl who I think she ended up going to jail for like 10 years. Her name was Trutt, Trutt. So at the end of the book, I really like, I'm not going to talk about it just because I think it'll leave something fun for you guys if you want to read it. But there was a leaked Clorox PR crisis plan. So in case Clorox got in trouble for having, what was it? In case Clorox got in trouble for having chlorine exposure too much in their products, Keachum, which is their public relations company, came up with all these different ideas and game plans for what they would do if the public got a hold of this information that their products caused cancer. So there was all these different scenarios. Scenario 1, scenario 2. You see that? It's kind of... Anyway, so it was leaked. So that was at the end of the book. Overall, I really loved this. Oh, one more thing. I'm trying to say, we're at 20 minutes. Okay. One more thing. I thought it was really wild. They talked about the Body Shop. Do you guys, I'm a girl. I remember the Body Shop. Do y'all remember the Body Shop? It was this cosmetic company, and it was like, oh, if you get the Body Shop, it's from really, it's fair trade. So we get it from like these African women who are working on shea butter, and it's like so good for your skin because it's natural, and we're helping the community over there. Like it was all, their sales pitch was, if you buy our products, you're being socially responsible. So it talked about, that was a Hill and Knowlton client. And the owner of that company was Anita Roddick. She was called the Mother Teresa of capitalism. Anyway, the company took a massive fall because all of their advertising that said that they don't do any tests on animals and that they're ethically what's the word I'm looking for? Sound, whatever. And it's all fair trade. All of that was bogus, and it was all put on by PR, Hill and Knowlton. Same thing with Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and Ben & Jerry's is still doing the same crap today with social responsibility. But it just showed how Body Shop was caught. I don't think that they still sell their products anymore here, but they definitely still have some kind of a face in India. And Ben & Jerry's is still here. The ice cream, I don't know if you guys remember, I loved Colbert back before I woke up. And I remember him getting his own ice cream from Ben & Jerry's. And now that all makes sense. It's kind of this whole corrupt phronema of that industry, right? So here's a couple more videos I wanted to show you about those two. Let's see. Okay, here's the Body Shop.
All you need is a sort of a vision of an idea and finding people to expedite that vision and make it happen. I want in the Body Shop to be a delivery system for the voice of some of the best campaigns out there. You've got to find very creative ways of getting the message across. What sets us apart was our moral integrity, our sense of kindness, working with the hardest communities on this planet and giving them some benefits.
Right? Okay. Then here's the next thing I want to show you. Is the Ben & Jerry's. Let's see if I can find that one. That was good. Ben & Jerry's. I think it's this one. Oh, yeah. Ready?
Not gonna lie, we get this one a lot.
Yeah, we're in the ice cream business, but we've always been about much more than just ice cream. We use our power, our privilege, our platform, and our relationship with our fans to advocate for progressive social change. So no, we're not just going to stick to ice cream.
And we're never going to stop trying to dismantle white supremacy and the climate crisis or fight for our democracy.
And no, we're not going to stop fighting laws that restrict trans rights, ban books, and roll back abortion protections.
Caring about that stuff, doing something about it, and supporting communities who've been directly impacted by it is part of our DNA, and it has been since we opened up our first scoop shop in Burlington, Vermont back in 1978.
Ben & Jerry were two best friends who love making ice cream. But
Okay. Isn't that wild? So, Ben & Jerry's. Dismantling white supremacy, one ice cream at a time. So buy ice cream, kids, and you'll be fighting white supremacy and going for trans rights. Anyway, all of that, again, is PR. And I'm surprised, this is, of course, that's a recent ad. So it's been 30 years from this when Body Shop went down because it was exposed for not actually being any of those things that it purported to be. Ben & Jerry's is still going strong. So I looked it up, and they're using Edelman PR right now, and they have their own in-house PR guys. So they are on fire with their PR, advertising this social justice type message to get sales. It's all just for the bottom line. Anyway, that's it. Other than one more thing. I was going to read a quote from Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett was once R.J. Reynolds' largest shareholder. That was the tobacco company. He said, "I'll tell you why I like the cigarette business. It costs a penny to make. Sell it for $1. It's addictive. And there's fantastic brand loyalty." So that's Warren Buffett, who, when I was growing up, I was told he was like he's the Oracle of Omaha. He knows about investing and he's so good with money and he's a good guy. He's a philanthropist. No, he is not a good guy. As a matter of fact, so he's entangled in this whole thing too. And he showed up in a few other books that I've been reading recently about being a major contributor to Boys Town in Nebraska, which was the Catholic boys' school that it was realized that during the Franklin scandal, which was basically a small PEDO ring, they would pull some of their victims from that the boys' town. So Warren Buffett has his name around, right? Anyway, okay, ending on that note, I recommend this book. Toxic Sludge is good for you. And I want to give a shout out to another YouTube channel called Interesting Books Reviewed. He is phenomenal. He has read so many interesting books. It's a very good title for his channel. And so if you're ever looking for something good to read from a credible source who knows what to recommend, his channel is phenomenal. So thanks to him. And here's this book. I put links to this book, a few other books below, the movies. And also there's a documentary on this book. It's like 45 minutes. I put a link to that as well. And if you're still with me, forgive me for my face. I had dental surgery and 3/4 of my face are completely numb right now. So I feel like I'm a stroke victim. So if you have not noticed that, thank you. If you did, that is why I look like a stroke victim. This whole side of my face I can't feel, but I'm doing my best because I had just finished this and I want to make sure that I make a video before I forget. So with that said, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. It's Friday here and I will be back with more content at some point in the future.